Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. Down here in the basement bait shop, I just finished doing a couple of rod repairs. I got a few in the rod drying rack here. I put some new tips on. I put a couple of guides on. These are just some rods that I've had some casualties during the course of the year and I hadn't gotten around to repairing them yet. But I wanted to get them ready here because I know I might need a couple of them for my next tournament. And I'm getting ready to head out on the water, so I thought I would do a video for you. But I look out the window right now, guys, and we've got like sustained 25-mile-an-hour winds, which is extremely windy, and some would say too windy to get out on the water. But I honestly feel like, especially during the summer months, so these are some of your best days of fishing. We've got a big front coming in tonight. We've got really strong winds, and I'm going to say we've had at least a week of very, very calm conditions, meaning not even a breeze in the air. So to have a hot, warm, windy day like we've got with a cold front, or not a cold front, but a storm front moving in, it's probably going to lead to some really good fishing. I really like getting out into the wind, kind of riding the big waves and setting up in places where I know the fish are going to utilize that wind-driven current and the wave action to their advantage. That happens a lot, especially during the summer warm water periods. So I want to get out there and fish it, but it got me thinking about doing a video on some of the best baits to use. Now, I'm not just talking about fishing in a strong wind. I'm talking about fishing on the windy side of the lake. So you're going to have some white caps, you're going to have some rough water, and you're very much going to have a lot of wave action. Now, the key here is when you think about wave action, a lot of times the top portion of the water, so the actual wave itself, is where you have a lot of that rolling action. But the fish will generally sit underneath that. They're going to sit closer to the bottom and they're looking up. So they're looking for some bait fish that are getting tossed and turned in the waves, and those bass will come up and take advantage of an easy meal. So when that happens, or when we have these conditions, I generally like to try to mimic more of your bait fish, more of the primary forage species for most bass. Now, this will hold up across the country, whether you live up north or you live down south. You're gonna have actively feeding bass taking advantage of these windy conditions. So I want to walk you through kind of my favorite baits for doing this. There are a lot of baits that don't work well during this period. A lot of your lighter finesse presentations, a lot of your baits that will be higher up in the water column generally don't necessarily work as well in rough conditions. So you do want to choose wisely. And in most of the instances, these baits are going to be some of your most productive that not only allow you to fish these rough conditions effectively and efficiently, they're also the ones that are going to generate the most bites because they're doing a good job at mimicking the forage species. So let's dive right into this. I want to point out that each of these baits, I'll put links to Tackle Warehouse if you're looking and you're interested in purchasing some of these. At the same time, guys, I want to remind you, if you're looking to support the channel in another way, just click that subscriber button. Great way to do it. All right, so like I said, most of these fish are going to be sitting a little bit lower in the water column, looking to feed up. Now, this holds true regardless of the depth. So if you're fishing in 4 feet of water, a lot of those fish will try to stay closer to the bottom, and they're looking up, so they're in the bottom 2 feet, looking up at the top 2 feet. And if you're fishing in 15 feet of water and have giant 3 and 4 foot rollers, they're still going to be closer to the bottom looking up. Now, in most of these instances, I'm looking to power fish, and I'm doing this because the power fishing techniques are easier to cast, and they're going to allow me to maintain much better bait feel. Meaning if I'm throwing a slower moving bait or a lighter action bait, those are going to be ones that the wind is grabbing the line, pulling it out, and preventing you from working that bait appropriately. So one of my absolute favorites is a heavy spinner bait. This is just a big Berkley power blade. This is one of their big 3/4 ounce spinner baits. I've got here a big Champ Swimmer as a trailer, because generally speaking, this is going to be a bait that is going to ride just a couple of feet under the surface. And a lot of times that's where you're going to have your roiled water, where you've got a bunch of color to the water, you've got a bunch of sediments, maybe you've got a mud line, maybe you've got just some water discoloration because of how turbulent that surface is. And generally speaking, a spinnerbait does a great job at creating flash and creating that bait fish presentation that the bass are looking to feed on. So one of my top baits is always going to be a bigger, heavier spinnerbait. The key here is a heavier spinnerbait. I like a 3/4 ounce, I like a 1 ounce, sometimes even heavier. Generally, my blade choice is going to go with the watercolor. So if I've got pretty muddy conditions, I'll go with something more like the Indiana blades or Colorado blades. If I've got really clear conditions, that's when I'm going to go double willow. But I want a bigger profiled spinnerbait, a heavier head that's not going to get caught in those waves. It's going to ride below the waves. Spinnerbait is absolutely one that I'm going to have tied on. Next up, you've got your jerk baits. This is a Berkeley Stunna. A jerk bait is a great bait at getting down below those waves and creating the bait fish appearance again that we're after. Now, I will say I'm fishing this much more erratically, much quicker. I'm not going to let this bait just sit there for long pauses. It's a lot of rapid twitchings, very quick pauses. I'm keeping this bait moving so that I can maintain feel the bait in the windy conditions. And I'm generally going to have this where I'm casting with the wind. I'm going to try to make as long a cast possible. And with a jerk bait, a lot of times you can almost cast your entire spool out. So this is going to be a key bait for me. I generally like to go with something, again, that's got more of your bait fish appearance. A lot of times your off-whites and your white colors, your pearl colors are going to be a good color again, because like I mentioned before, a lot of times that upper water column has a little bit more water discoloration to it. And therefore I need something that the fish can hone in on. A lot of times your really bright colors will work well during this time period as well. Now, if I'm looking to fish a little bit deeper, so maybe I'm on a place like Lake St. Clair where it's very, very common to have 3 and 4 foot waves, and I want to get my bait down, say 8, 10, 12 foot, because I'm fishing in 15 or 16 foot, I like to go with a crankbait. This is one that I've had a lot of really good luck on Lake St. Clair specifically. It's a Rapala DT. This is a DT14. I like the DT10s as well, and a parrot color. Just a killer bait for covering those clear water flats where I'm not looking to make bottom contact. I want to be clear with that. I'm looking to get this bait down close to the bottom, but I'm still drawing the fish up from, the bottom up to 6-7 feet off the bottom. I'm trying to get it in their strike zone where I know they're looking up, and I want a bait coming by at a fast pace, because again, these fish generally, if they're feeding, are very actively feeding. So as soon as something comes through their wheelhouse, they're going to go after it. I'm not looking at putting a bait in their area and letting them get a good look at it. I'm generally going to be burning this around. And again, when you're in really rough conditions, you don't have a whole lot of other choice than just burning a bait back to the boat. A lot of times, if you were to sit there and not really keep a bait moving quickly, you're going to end up where your bait is not in the strike zone. Another really good one. So this is one if I'm fishing shallower. So maybe you're fishing a riprap bank or a causeway or a point where you're fishing, say, in 5 foot of water or less. I like to throw a bigger, heavier vibrating jig. This is a Picasso Shockwave. I've got a Berkeley Power Stinger on the back. Great combination. This bait, again, the key goes back with the heavier size. I like a 3/4 ounce. That's one of the things I really like about this guy right here. And again, I'm fishing this, trying to keep it closer to the bottom, but I'm not necessarily trying to make contact. I'm going to do a straight retrieve, a couple of rapid pauses, maybe a twitches in the rod tip, but I'm just trying to keep my bait above where the fish are at, but still get them to react to it. A vibrating jig is a great way at doing that. And if you're fishing around a lake that's got a bunch of weeds, this is another one where I love it. If, say, you're fishing a weed flat, maybe it's 12 foot of water, the weeds are coming up to 6 feet off the bottom, a heavier vibrating jig will get down, tick the tops of those weeds, and therefore be a really good bait at generating the strikes. And the reason you need a heavier one like this 3/4 ouncer is because in rough water, your bait's going to tend to want to rise. So you need a heavier vibrating jig to get down to those weed tips so that you can tip them. It's a really good way at generating some very, very big strikes, especially on your northern fisheries. The last one I'm going to go with is a big, heavy football jig. So this is a 3/4 ouncer. I've got it just pipped with a Pip Berkeley Power Bait Pit Boss. This is a really good one if you know the fish are connected to the bottom, they're not willing to come up, but you're really getting blown very quickly, say across a point or a deep water hump. A good thing to just drag on the bottom is a big, heavy football jig, 3/4 ounce, a 1 ouncer. These are going to be baits that you can keep bottom contact with, because a lot of times the problem with fishing in really rough conditions is it's hard to maintain bottom contact. A football jig is one of the best baits at doing that. So if you've got a place where the fish just don't want to come up to eat a bait, or maybe you're fishing deeper than most of your other baits are going to be, say you're fishing humps that top out at 25 feet and you can't get other baits down close enough to where those fish are at to draw them up off the bottom, sometimes you have to go with a big, heavy bait like a football jig, and it's a really good way to generate those strikes and keep the feel of the bottom, which can be a crucial thing to your success on the water. So these are baits that I'm going to have tied on right now. I'm expecting to go out and be able to catch some fish, hopefully get some good fish. One of the other things I love about fishing a windy stretch is a lot of times, because you get pushed through there so quickly, you can generate bites continuously, meaning you make a drift, you catch one or two, you come right back, you make another drift, you catch one or two, and it's almost like you can do that all day long. If you've got a good stretch of break line or a good stretch of bank that the fish are coming to feed, because remember, they're coming to these areas to feed because you've got a lot of bait fish that are being pushed into them, and therefore the fish just keep coming to you. So you can continue to make the same drift over and over and over and generally keep catching fish. It's one of the reasons I love to do this. A lot of people don't like to fish in the wind, but you really can take advantage of the wind and catch a lot of nice fish, catch numbers of fish. Great way to fish if you're willing to put up with it. So hopefully this helped you. What other baits do you guys like to throw in rough, windy conditions? I'd love to know from you guys as well. Throw it in the comment section. Otherwise, guys, thanks for watching. Hit the like button if you enjoyed it. Stay tuned. New video coming out tomorrow.